I'm always interested in this like crossover space that I know that is kind of like your life work of the sort of the development of consciousness and imagination as in relationship to creativity. And I think the other reason this show is kind of exciting to me and meaningful to me now is that, like, I think last time we talked, I was talking to you about my book and the development of creativity. And I think that since I focused on that so much and talking about, processes and how you might develop the imagination, how you might develop inspiration, how you might allow yourself to do like small sketches and concept sketches. All of that development of the sort of subconscious and the processes of creativity that sort of have act on all of our minds, but we're maybe sort of more conscious of it or less conscious of it. And over the past few years, I've obviously been trying to like pay a lot of attention to that, like try to learn from what seems to be happening in the subconscious, in my subconscious mind.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Hi, John. Can you hear me?
Hi. Yes, I can.
You look so radiant in your white.
Oh, thank you.
You're like
Uh,
Gandalf.
Great. That's totally the look I was going for.
Yeah.
One sec. Just organize. There we go. Right. Yeah, I'm surrounded by technology. This is a radioactive glow. No, it's not. Yeah, it's so weird, these conversations, because there's so many. I've got different things recording the sound, and I've got different things. It's a lot to get distracted by, and for some reason all I can see is me. I can't see you. Hang on one sec. Okay. So I'll probably leave all that stuff in the introductions, and I kind of like it. I kind of like the realness of it,
Yeah.
rather than to try and pretend it's not what it is. So how's it going? I haven't seen you in ages.
I know it's been a minute, right? I'm well. I a year ago I moved out of New York City and I moved to Milford, Pennsylvania. And it's actually not very far from New York City. It's really only about an hour and a half. But it's amazing to me what a different environment it is. It's we're in the Pocono Mountains, so Appalachian Mountains. It's all woods. There's my husband and I were talking about all of the different wildlife we've seen in our front yard, including, well, we had a bear in the backyard. We've had deer, fox, raccoon, skunk, lots of squirrels, lots of birds, kind of a badger, just all in the front yard.
Wow.
It's been amazing. And
How long did you live in Brooklyn for?
well, I lived in New York City for 28 years. I lived in Brooklyn for 22 years. And I've never in my life lived in a small town. And I was a
Ah,
little bit braced to not quite like it. There were a lot of reasons I wanted to make this change. First and foremost, like transforming myself to a place where I had a much bigger studio space and also a lot less distraction, a lot more ability to focus. And I was
mm,
worried that I was going to like really crave the city. Living, I've always lived in an urban setting, but I find I get in and out of the city just often enough that I'm like, I'm great. And that the peace and quiet and the sounds of nature and like it's starting to be beautiful fall here. There's a lot of beautiful fall color. So it's very beautiful. I love it.
yeah. So you've been through one whole cycle of the seasons now, and you're into the second. It's like, oh, I know what's coming now.
Yeah.
Whereas the first year, it's like, wow, look at what spring is like. And then it's like, wow,
Well,
look
in
at
the
what summer is
first year
like.
too, like I felt like I spent a lot of my time kind of like looking around, being like, I guess I live here now, sort of like feeling like I was in an Airbnb that I didn't quite know how to use the dishwasher. And then it took kind of a long time to sort of get settled in. And now I do have a sense of feeling at home here. And there's just been so much, since I've talked to you last, I've had so much change in my life. I wrote that book, Path of Drawing. I moved
Mm.
out of the city. My father passed away.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Young, my younger child went to college. So now have both of my kids who are now young adults and in the process of establishing their own life someplace else. So it's been a really
Yeah, right.
lot of transformation in my life.
Yeah, wow. And did I get it right? You never lived in the country before. You've never lived like, yeah, okay.
I've never lived in a small town. I never wanted to live in a small town, but the combination of what I was wanting in terms of studio space and access to the city, and then this town is actually very walkable. Like there's a great deal that I can do to walk to get a coffee, go to the post office, go to the drugstore, see friends. It's very walkable, and so that's been really kind of ideal for me. Yeah,
Yeah. How far is it from New York?
about an hour and a half, 2 hours if there's traffic.
Yeah, okay. All right. Yeah, that's not so bad. When I moved down here to the country, I had lived in small towns before, and I didn't have a good experience. I didn't like it. I liked the nature, but I didn't like the people.
Uh-huh.
I didn't like the small town kind of mentality. So when I was moving down here, I was quite apprehensive as well. But it's like, well, when I moved down, it's got less now. They've improved the roads. But when I moved down first, it was 5 hours from Dublin.
Mm-hmm.
So once you're here, it's not like you could pop off to do anything. It's not like there's no other cities, but I'm from Dublin. I was born.
Yeah.
I wasn't born in nature. So I totally relate to that feeling of like wonder that you have, like being in nature and all the different.
Yeah.
I'm very familiar with it now because I've been here like since 2013, so it's like over 12 years. But it's still very beautiful. I hasn't lost. I'm familiar with it, but I haven't lost the wonder of it.
Yeah. Well, I have a lot of wonder and gratitude just for my natural environment, and it definitely feels, I can feel like my blood pressure, my ability to sort of hear my own thoughts. It's just it's much more supportive and quiet. And I was nervous about that sort of small town life, small town mentality. But I think because we're so close to New York City, there's actually a great deal of other people who are also maybe writers or creative people, maybe also still work in the city. So like I grew up in St. Louis, which is in the Midwest, and a small town in Missouri or Illinois is very different from a small town in the Northeast. So I've been really, pleased to be making some new friends, getting to know new people, and discovering a lot of, different kinds of people. It's been good.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I discovered as well. It's like not all small towns are the same, and I'm very lucky where I am as well. It's lovely. I've never encountered that kind of small town mentality. I've encountered what I kind of think of as what you'd see in a movie where you just, you're sort of, oh, hi, and oh, hi over there, Bill. And, you just sort of know everybody and everybody knows about you and everybody knows your business, but it's kind of okay.
That is true. And I think actually I've been thinking about, different stages of life. When I was in my 20s or 30s, I couldn't have tolerated that feeling of like sort of everybody knowing my business. And I think you feel at a younger age, you need to sort of get into a place where there is more sort of anonymity so you can kind of cast around and figure out who you are. And now kind of being in an atmosphere where yeah, like my neighbors like know when I get a new rug delivered and they're like, oh, I see, they say you really know a lot about your life. It's I'm just much more relaxed. I'm like, yeah, hey, it's great to see you.
Yeah. What they do here, I don't know whether this is specific to Kerry where I live, but and maybe it's the ancientness of the country because you've been to Ireland, haven't you? Since we nearly caught up and anyway,
Yeah,
we'll
I've
get
been
back
to
to that in a minute.
Dublin now and Cork briefly, and we went to Cove. And back in the before I had gone up to Northern Ireland, so I've been a few times, and it's such a beautiful, lyrical, poetic place.
Yeah. So I think because of the ancientness, one of the things that people do here is they almost like ask you about your lineage because they're trying to place you in the context of I think the landscape or the social landscape. But if you're from a big city, it feels very invasive. They're like, they want to know where you work. They want to know who your father was, who your mother was, how what are you doing here? How did you end up here?
Yeah.
And yeah, initially I found that very, challenging, but now I'm kind of used to it. I just kind of know everybody knows. And I remember when I moved to this particular house, I was talking to the neighbor. It would have been 6 months after I'd moved in here, and his cousin was in the house, and he he went to introduce me, and he said, "Oh, this is John," and the cousin just went, "I know." Like, I already know who that guy is and I know everything about him. You don't have to tell me anything about him. And yeah, nice to meet you and everything, but you don't need to
I'm
tell me
finding
anything. I
that
already
too.
know.
Also, like
In fact, everybody knows.
yeah, I turned my garage space into a studio. And so I think it's also obvious to anybody walking around the town, and it's a small town. So if you walked around the town, you've probably walked past the studio. And they're like, oh, yeah, you're the artist who moves into the gray house, So it's really,
Yeah.
yeah.
What were you over for last time? What were you over in Ireland for last time? The time we nearly caught up when it was when you were I think you were with family or something though, was it? It was more of a family thing, was it?
Uh-huh. My husband, Duncan, his family is Scots and Irish, and his mother is entirely Irish, Cashman. And we went to Cove, and then we went on a little bit of an excursion, and I'm afraid I cannot at the top of mind remember the name of the small town that her Cashman family was from, but we went and saw their old grave markers and the church that her ancestor was married in, and it's near Cove. And so that was a really special little excursion for Duncan's mother. She had never been to Ireland. And so I went with his whole family, and we traveled around seeing kind of the old homeland. It was beautiful.
Yeah, great. Okay, well, I hadn't planned on. I'd kind of stopped doing these kind of interviews, but then you sent me such a lovely email, and I really liked your the paintings and your work and what you're doing. So tell me about it.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. I mean, I always just enjoy my conversations with you. And I feel like we've had a few different conversations over the years that have just planted little seeds in my mind that have kept. This new work the title of the show is The Fey Wild. And you probably are very familiar with this whole mythology, much more than, frankly, a lot of Americans are. But the idea of the fairy realm or the Fey realm. And I departed from A Midsummer Night's Dream and sort of the universe of Shakespeare's Midsummer Night's Dream, where he has Titania and Puck and Oberon and the fairies as a contrast to the world of the Westerners, who are the Athenians in Shakespeare. And I've always loved Shakespeare, and my background was in theater, and I worked at Colorado Shakespeare Festival for a few years. So I've done a fair amount of Shakespeare when I was doing theater work. And that play is just an absolute delight. And I thought about the narrative of it, and I've always done narrative work, but I was interested in doing a body of work where it was more than just one painting with the narrative, but kind of a bunch of different paintings that kind of speak together. I think when you do a play, you don't just have one scene and one image. You kind of have a story that has different moments in the narrative, and then a whole experience that your viewer is kind of traveling through. So I was interested in that idea. And then I saw this metaphor of the Fey realm and the world of the Athenians, the worlds of the Westerners, as being a kind of a grand metaphor for sort of the world as we know it, the world of like business as usual in this troubling time of ours of like hierarchical class structure, income inequality, authoritarian encroachment, patriarchy, and all of those, and capitalism, and all of those things in contrast to the Fey world, which is actually a matriarchy. Oberon is not the king of the Fey world. Titania is the queen of the Fey realm. And she rules not by power over, but collaboration with. It's also quite anarchistic, and what, is up maybe down, and what is left maybe right. Things are sort of illogical or unpredictable. They are also kind of communal. And then, of course, in our culture, the shorthand, right, the language of saying a fairy, right, is also a metaphor for someone who's LGBTQ. And my own children are non-binary. So as they have developed, and I've become connected with a lot more of their community who is trans, LGBTQ, of course, I'm in fear for their safety and this, the rights and safety of my, trans and LGBTQ loved ones. But I've been thinking about my own work as a figurative artist, and how that expansion in my own family kind of invites me to think in a larger sense about what figuration, what gender, what all of those things might mean in the language of figuration. And so I sort of saw that the Fey realm kind of made a lovely universe of metaphor for all of these things that I was thinking about in figuration. So that's how I ended up.
How'd you that, like, when, I mean, the paintings are beautiful, really lovely, and powerful. I found them very powerful. So I can imagine you being at the beginning of it and going, "Oh yeah, this is a good idea. Yeah, I think I can get some paintings out of that." And now you're at the other end of it, and I'm guessing you're transformed by it.
It's funny. I am finding that the more I'm also talking about it and kind of closing up the work, like trying to finish the last pieces that are going in, to be honest, I have more and more ideas about things that I could put into this. So it's kind of interesting how something expands. The whole concept started with the painting of Titania and Bottom. And I think I made the concept sketch for that. It might have been 5 years ago now. And thinking about the bower, the beauty of sort of a scene of twilight. I love all of the coloration. I like that color palette, all of those like cerulean and celestial blues that time of day. So I'd made a sketch, and I really had always liked it. It always kind of drew me. And I find that I often make these little concept sketches, and some never develop and some just persist in my mind. And then at a certain point, I started to think, well, how could I really make that, thinking about like a figure with a donkey head? And that seemed hard and silly and terrifying. And then I started to also think about, well, why does that seem challenging? And in developing this work, I feel like actually I've been kind of running with the scissors towards all sorts of things that as a young artist, and especially my training in like my master's program, I was sort of taught not to like. When I entered the world of figurative art, in the 90s, it was still sort of the art world in New York was very much kind of under the thrall of postmodernism. The language of realism was very much about the real world. There was very little, like anything fantastical, anything mannerist, anything imaginative seemed just silly. Like I've been thinking a lot about the Rococo in this body of work, and like Fragonard and Boucher. And those are two, two artists who just were not at all respected when I was first kind of coming into figuration. And and then also I'm thinking about my identity as a female artist, right? And what are the qualities that they might ascribe to feminine art practices? And so much of my training, like in the late 90s, was still shaped by this very like gendered language around valuation in art, which I think is still persistent with us. So that the art was forceful, masculine, strong. Even going back to Aristotle, like things that were colorful were deemed less rigorous and less important than things that were had a lot of form and design. Things that were decorative, things that were, God forbid, effeminate, right? All of those things were basically bad words about a piece of work. And you did not want your work to be illustrational. You did not want your work to be, pretty, all of these things. And then at a certain point, I kind of realized like those are very gendered, like talking about masculine, feminine qualities that we ascribe culturally to this or to that. And so I've been thinking about, well, what does it mean to paint like a woman, to like make very womanly paintings? And then thinking as I've, just become more mature and understanding my own likes and dislikes, I've always had a strong like predilection for color. I've always it's always been a strength in my work, my use of color. And so instead, I just feel like I've been kind of running with the scissors towards it, all of those things in this body of work. So there's a satyr, and the satyr, is also a female satyr. You usually see male satyrs in classical painting. And so a female sort of satyr with like goat legs, but like, where do baby satyrs come from? I mean, there must be female satyrs out there somewhere. And allowing myself to like just the theatricalism of, yes, like the magic of a man who's been transformed into a donkey head, it's and it allow the more fun I allow to have myself with the work, the more fun I'm having, and then like have more ideas in this direction or that direction. So it took me a long time to kind of maybe develop the courage, and then also kind of a grander vision of why I was interested in this work, like what were the themes underneath that were important to me. But once I kind of grabbed onto those threads, I've really been enjoying it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I can remember going to see A Midsummer Night's Dream many, many years ago, like over 30 years ago, in Dublin. And it wasn't in a theatre. It was with a theatre company called Footsbarn, who had they had a circus tent, and they travelled around Europe, and they put on plays in this circus tent. And the location that they had in Dublin was inside a secret garden that I'd never been to before. So, like, before the thing even started, I came up to this brick wall, and there's one little door, and you go through it, and they had lit the walkway to the tent with, and it was dusk, with light, like fire. What do you call those things with on a stick, like a fire kind of thing, on a lantern kind of things. And then you go into this amazing circus tent, and then this amazing magical play.
Yeah. So I love that. And I feel like Midsummer kind of represents in many ways that the land of the theater, right? The players, the land of imagination, the escapism of it. And then I think about like our world and this sort of encroaching authoritarianism. And that in this context, as creatives, as like spiritual seekers, that that you have to find these, that more and more you feel like you have to find these hidden passageways. You have to find these back garden doors that allow you into this universe of freedom, of sexual freedom, of sexual gender and identity freedom. The theater people are so deeply grounded in that kind of practice of like being who they are no matter what's going on in the world around them. And so I feel like Midsummer kind of it reminds us of the magic, the beauty, the freedom, the playfulness we have to deeply ground ourselves in order to survive these sort of dark times.
Yeah, just for someone, if they're listening, they're not familiar with the play, when you were talking about Bottom and the donkey head and Titania, maybe could you just explain that scene a bit, just in case someone's like, what?
Titania is the queen, and her consort, the king, is Oberon. In the play, the two of them are having something of a tiff. And so they're having a bit of a fight. And if you go into the folklore, actually, it was a very polyamorous kind of relationship. It wasn't a strictly normal partnership. And they're having a bit of a tiff. And so Oberon tells Puck, who is like the jester, the trickster, to enchant Titania. And so Oberon gets Puck to cast a spell on Bottom. And Bottom is I'm forgetting his human name. So he's one of the actors, one of the mechanicals who's going to put on the play for the Athenians. He presents to this coarse, lower class player. And Puck then uses a magic spell and transforms him with the head of an ass, and then puts a love potion on Titania. The second she wakes up, she falls madly in love with the first thing she sees, which happens to be Bottom, who is this human man whose head has been transformed into an ass. And oftentimes in the play itself, you often see Bottom as this kind of laughable buffoon. Like, it's so silly, he's so ugly and ridiculous. How could she possibly like fall in love with this, with this ass? But there's also what is full of sexual jokes, because back in ancient Greek and Rome, there was the god Priapus, who was like the god of sexuality, and he was always shown with like an enormous phallus. So I think that there's all of these like sexual joke layers about Titania and Bottom and the ass, and in the play, then she has her fairies. She's madly in love with the donkey man now, to take Bottom to her bower and like give him, fruits and hay and all these beautiful things, and spend the night with her in her bower. And of course, also as like a theater person, you're like, it's always like an end scene. They just sort of go to sleep. But I'm like, I don't think they just went to sleep in the bower. So that's the sort of the setting, what's going on. And of course, the themes are also about the madness of love, that love is blind, and that, that we see with love, not necessarily the outside or the societal label of a thing, but we see with our heart and we see with passion. So the sort of the blindness and the insanity of love is another theme of the show. In the end, Puck, disenchants everyone, and Bottom goes back to do his performance in the theater, and Oberon and Titania kind of kiss and make up, and order is restored. But the whole lark of the play is very much about how everything gets turned on its head, and what's supposed to be up goes down, and love and the vagaries of life turn everything upside down.
Sponsor time. Well, sort of, not exactly. I don't have a sponsor. They're kind of, these podcasts are free. They're free to receive, but they're not free to make. I don't have a crew. I don't have a video editor. It's all just me. And I do receive a little bit of help from the people on Patreon. And if you're one of those people, thanks very much. But mostly it's funded by me. Mostly all this stuff is just funded by me. I don't have a social media person. I don't have anything. It's just me doing it. If you would like to help, support that. Support the sort of things I talk about: consciousness, love, compassion. If you want to support that kind of future, or me and what I'm doing, if you're getting something out of these podcasts, then I'd really appreciate it if you would help out on Patreon or PayPal. You can just, you don't have to get into Patreon if you don't want to. So if you want to help out on Patreon, it's patreon.com/John Dalton Podcasts. Or if you want to help out on PayPal, it's furtheremergence.com/support. But anything that you can send helps, and then you're a kind of sponsor. And then you can also, people write all the time with the different things they want response to, but maybe you've got something, or maybe you'd like me to do something else, in which case you're very welcome to. So the rough idea is, if you met me in person, would you like to have a cup of tea with me? And if you would, then you sort of can, the tea part anyway, because for roughly the price of a cup of tea, depending on where you are in the world, you can support what I'm doing on Patreon. And if you would do that, I would really appreciate it. It would help out a lot. Thanks very much. Back to the episode.
So from memory, it's almost like two stories, one within the other, because you have is it like 6 people wander into the forest, and then night falls, and they all kind of experience different things to do with the fairy world.
There's 4 lovers who are the young, 2 ingenues and hero types, 2 men, 2 women, and they're also like star-crossed. Like in the end, you want those to end up as 2 happy pairs that get married. But throughout the whole course of the play, one of them is in love with the wrong one. So they all get dumped into the forest, and then mischief ensues. Puck, and there's a mistake that's made. He's supposed to enchant one of the men, and he enchants the wrong one. And so everyone gets crisscrossed in terms of who they're supposed to fall in love with. And instead of being madly in love, they're like, I hate you completely. And they get into fights, and it's all these fits of passion. And then by the end of the play, Puck has kind of gotten all of the spells straightened out, and everyone is sort of back to falling in love with the proper person. But it's all like the Athenians, they live in this patriarchy. So the women have to have the blessing of their father. And the one father doesn't want his daughter to marry that guy. And it's like, I'm going to either kill her or send her to a nunnery if she doesn't do what I say, which is really rather shocking, don't you think? The idea that, you wouldn't, not only would you not get your blessing of your father, but he would either kill you or send you to a nunnery if.
Yeah, it's pretty extreme.
It's a little extreme.
Yeah. And then it's almost like they kind of, in the morning, they all wake up and are like, what happened? We staggered into the forest, and was that a dream? Did that happen?
Right, that's
But,
right.
Yeah,
and the very changed. Last monologue of the show is Robin Goodfellow, or Puck, saying, if we spirits have deceived you, allow yourself to imagine it's just a dream, and sort of inviting that on one hand, it's this sort of act of the unconscious and imagination, or on the other hand, maybe this real magical thing happened. I've been thinking a lot about myself as a child and how I loved fantasy, and I loved I very much wanted to believe in fairies and unicorns, and you're always trying very hard to as you get older, you more and more become aware of the world around you as its realness, and sort of the enchantment of your childhood imagination gets lost, and it feels like a sad loss. And I think now, as an older person, but also then as an artist, as a creative person, I'm I think actually it's just as important as ever for us to have these kind of fantastical flights of fancy in our imagination. And I think that's one of the primary themes of Midsummer is the importance of the imagination and the importance of being able to untether yourself from kind of the expectations of the world as you know it, the inevitability of business as usual, but that through like imagination, that actually is the path towards like transforming either one's own world or your community or the world around you into something new, that it only happens through these acts of imagination.
Yeah, well, certainly I found that the things that were told as children, like particularly about fairy tales, not the scary fairy tales, but the things, the fairy tales to do with magic and the fairy world, that they're kind of gross characterizations of something. So you get the idea of it. And then as you get older, you can start to look for the reality of it, which doesn't, in my experience anyway, it doesn't look like what we were told it looks like, but it's just as real and just as tangible if you are looking for it. So, what would be called, what did Carl Jung call it? Synchronicity. He was big on synchronicity. I was just thinking about that person and then they called me, So you can go, well, that's just coincidence. Or you could go, well, that's real magic. That's how it really happens, Yeah. Of all the places I could have been standing and I bumped into that person, what are the chances of that? Very unlikely. And as you walk around in nature, and you probably see this yourself, I find it much easier to see that kind of magic in nature. You can sort of walk into something and you're like, I felt this way 10 paces back and now I feel different. I just walked into something there. I don't know what it is, but it's definitely something, So rather than, I'm looking to see a fairy or see a thing, different people receive things in different ways, but you can register magic if you are looking for it. But I think without the fairy tales, you wouldn't even know where to start. So you kind of have the principles and this sort of, as I say, these kind of more graphic representations, and that sort of gets you started. But then, as you say, the world comes in and kind of goes, those are the things of childhood. Whereas if you kind of bypass that and go, well, maybe, but maybe not. Maybe let me keep looking and let me see what it's actually like. Then the world can be full of magic, or so that's my experience anyway.
I think that's so important. I think that we too often kind of are taught in our educations, this is to be realistic, don't be fanciful. But our ability to notice enchantment, a sense of a kind of spiritual or some sort of a strange vibration, right? Like once you're sort of like open to it, you discover it more and more. Like your comment was reminding me of just going for a walk with my dog, and it had been raining, but it wasn't really raining. It was just kind of a little misty, and the sun was about to set, and it sort of hit this foggy mist over a creek as the light was cutting through the trees. And it was positively the most enchanting visual place I've ever seen in my life. And I would have been absolutely not surprised at all to see a fawn or a fairy or and it's allowing ourselves to have a sense of connection to that, or a sense of that this is something expansive and larger than me. It's really, nature provides us over and over with those kinds of enchantments. It's really beautiful. But we have to kind of allow ourselves to be young at heart enough or playful of mind enough to see it.
Yeah, I find that what the easiest way is to not get into a is it real or not kind of thing. I find, you may have come across people who are like, oh no, fairies are real, and they're militant about it, and it's like, yeah, I think so, but maybe not. Like, it's a mysterious world, anything's possible. And if you don't like arrive at the none of it's real or that everything's real, then you can just kind of receive it all, and it just like gently reveals itself to you in whatever way it does. But when you're talking about that's certainly in the Irish tradition. It's one of the ways that the fairy people in Ireland are called the Tua de Danann, and they're full size. But part of this idea that they've been, that fairies are small comes from with the very mental way of thinking about things, and the industrialization and the sort of move away from magic. It's almost like, well, let's make them small because then they're manageable, Then it's,
I think
they're less.
fairies are not manageable. They cannot be managed, right? Yeah.
No. But one of the things that's kind of commonly known is that they move in the mist, So they sort of put the mist out in front of them so they can do whatever they're going to do, But it's taken very seriously here. Like, there are certain trees that you see them in the middle of a field, and the field is completely clear, and there'll be one tree in the middle of the field, and they'll plow around it. They won't go near it because that's a fairy tree. And they've had motorways diverted around trees or fairy mounds or whatever. And
here in the United States, we don't have enough of that sense of the sort of magic and the sacredness of the land, right? We don't have enough of a sense of like, no, that particular tree is important enough. You need to build the road to move around it. And I think it's, we've had African, Indigenous American Indian culture, and there's a lot of folklore and myth about the land from them, but so much of that culture and language has been lost that it hasn't really, it's largely lost to American sense of place.
Yeah.
So the show, I'm also like kind of I'm trying to also thinking about theater and thinking about how you kind of create a framework, a certain receptivity to the work. And I'm kind of aware of what, in the ways of which that this particular body of work is different from other work that I've done and different from a lot of like figurative work that's out there. So I wanted to kind of create an environment that would set the stage, so to speak, for people coming in to kind of have a different expectation of what they're going to see. So in the front room, the way the gallery is set up, it has like the entryway and the front room, and then there's sort of a desk and a hallway and a second room. So there's sort of two rooms with the gallery installation. And the front room, I kind of am thinking of as like the outer boundary. And this is sort of like the field that's next to the tree with the mist around it, right? Like it's close. Yes. You moved out of the regular world and into this transitional space, but you're not yet in the transitional space. And then there's going to be this series of like curtains that you have to walk through that then take you into the inner room. And the inner room is kind of like the fairy realm. And I've made all of these, I showed you some of the pictures, like large paper poppies. Yeah. Paper poppies, and they're all quite large. Like the smallest one is like 14 inches across, and the biggest one is almost like 3 feet across, so that you will move around these giant flowers so that you feel like you're in a kind of a magical environment. And I've never done, I did theater design. And so I've done a lot of installation with that. But with my presentation of paintings and artwork, I've never done something where I've created environmental elements to kind of influence that. So I'm both really excited about it and I have no idea how it's going to work because I've never done it before. So that's been another thing that I want people to move through this space and kind of interact with it in a little bit different way than people typically do when they go to see a gallery show. It just hangs on the wall and it doesn't require much of them, or it doesn't, they're not leaving the world behind. They're bringing the world in with them.
Yeah, right. That sounds great. Sounds really good. I'm thinking of there's a woman I follow on Instagram who dresses as a fairy and goes to I think they're fairs because, well, it's only ever little videos, and she does these amazing things with bubbles, and she looks so like a fairy, and she sits like she's not standing, she's kind of sitting, and you can see the kids coming over to her and they're like, it's a real fairy, mom. And she's does all this amazing bubble thing, it's beautiful. Yeah, it reminded me of it when you're talking about that.
Yeah. And with all of the inner room is sort of like Titania's court. So there's a painting of Puck, and then in the play, the attendants for Titania are Peas Blossom and Mustard Seed and Cobweb and Moth. And they're often kind of portrayed as these little fairy children and that sort of diminutive fairy sort of idea that you were talking about. But in this realm, I've kind of just imagining them as like theater kids. And and all of the theater kids around me, in terms of my younger child is a theater major. And so all of her friends, their friends that come, and then my friends from church and my church choir, a lot of them are performers on Broadway and stuff. So I reached out to them to get some actors to then come and do that, and really leaned into that they're all sort of trans. They're all sort of not strictly one gender or another. And the sort of gender ambiguity should really be clear. The Puck that I made is also kind of, he's a trans performer. So I wanted to bring all of that in terms of creating a universe that is safe and people have creative freedom. It's a in this protected realm. So I've been having a lot of fun with that, and it's been interesting working with these different, my child Jonah and their friend Rowan posed for one, and then my friend Dimitri and their friend David posed for another, and they're all they're performers, and that has been just fun for me. It's making different connections instead of kind of just like just drawing from the universe of sort of art models, but also like crossing over into theater and performers. And performers then also bring something very different to the work when you're working together as the model, as with them as your art model, because they much more are like, you're the director, and I tell them this is the prompt for the story and this is where we are in the story, and they just instantaneously like can embrace this sense of play and theatricalism. And I've always thought about in my work with like narrative work, kind of casting my characters and being a bit of the director with, this person has this look, but I've never taken this sort of subsequent step of actually kind of working with people for the paintings that are really specifically kind of thinking about it from an actor's point of view. And it's been fun and really rewarding. And I feel like I want to keep kind of leaning into that in terms of how I'm developing figurative painting.
Yeah, right. Sort of reminds me of Will Rochford. He paints what he describes as stills of films that never were.
Yeah.
So he'll get the actors and he'll get the whole set thing, and it's very much, and then the body of the particular show will be all from this particular film that's just in his head.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's fascinating.
So when you were saying about the actors, are you going to have them there like on the opening night kind of thing?
I very much hope so. So Jonah and Rowan will be there. And I think I am hoping that many of the models for my show will be there.
Yeah.
And they dress fabulously.
The which?
I hope they really, dress fabulously.
Tell me about the gallery, because I don't think I'd come across it before, but it sounded really lovely.
It's an interesting historic gallery space. It's called Equity Gallery. It is the physical space of an organization called the New York Artist Equity Association. And that's a nonprofit organization founded in 1947. And it was created by a group of artists who wanted to create a alternate universe to what they were seeing as the sort of developing capitalist art gallery model, and trying to create something that was more communal, not so much commercial minded as supporting the creativity or the development of the artists minded. The artists associated with that were a lot of names that you'd recognize: Jacob Lawrence, Gwendolyn Knight Lawrence, John Sloan. I'm gonna not do a great job coming up with all of these names of these well-known American artists from the mid-century. So it has a lovely historic background, and it was always had this mission of being a space not so much controlled by a gallerist trying to turn the work into a commodity, but by a group of artists trying to support the development of each other in their art. So it's a really nice art organization, New York Artist Equity Association. I've been a member there for 6 years or so. I've participated in a number of different group shows there, and this will be the first time I'm having a solo show in that space. It's in the Lower East Side, which is a great space for galleries in New York City, because it's one of the few places in Manhattan still that has its sort of old New York feel. There aren't that many high rises. It's still sort of small building, Lower East Side tenement buildings. And so it has this lovely sort of old New York atmosphere.
Oh, nice. And how long is the show for?
It's up for 4 weeks. It opens November
wow.
6th, and I think the last day is December 6th.
Nice. Yeah. Okay.
I'm always interested in this like crossover space that I know that is kind of like your life work of the sort of the development of consciousness and imagination as in relationship to creativity. And I think the other reason this show is kind of exciting to me and meaningful to me now is that, like, I think last time we talked, I was talking to you about my book and the development of creativity. And I think that since I focused on that so much and talking about, processes and how you might develop the imagination, how you might develop inspiration, how you might allow yourself to do like small sketches and concept sketches, all of that development of the sort of subconscious and the processes of creativity that sort of have act on all of our minds, but we're maybe sort of more conscious of it or less conscious of it. And over the past few years, I've obviously been trying to like pay a lot of attention to that, like try to learn from what seems to be happening in the subconscious, in my subconscious mind, or dreams, and then it's been satisfying and fun to then have the opportunity to develop it into a body of work. So I'm happy to tell you about it, because I feel like my conversations with you over the years have kind of strengthened that particular interest in myself.
Oh, nice. And how has it been received so far? Is there a lot of interest in the paintings?
There is interest in the paintings, although honestly, working with this gallery, they have really encouraged me to not share too much too far ahead, right? And to kind of like save up my firework for for now that it's time to really present it. So honestly, it's going to be news to me too, to find out how exactly it's received and how people and what people will think of it. Especially, I'm curious to see what people who've known my work for a long time, how it strikes them. I'm sort of hoping to connect with some new audiences. I'm, trying present it in a little bit different way, see if I can attract a slightly different, maybe people who hadn't seen my work before, maybe think they were interested in narrative figuration, and see if I can draw some new people in. So I'm hopeful.
Yeah, well, based on what you were saying about how things are and how people are at the moment, my sense is they'll be gobbled up, that they'll all be sold before you even open the door, kind of thing. Because this idea of business as usual is, I think, harder and harder and harder to maintain. And if you happen to be in the position to buy paintings, and in every other aspect of your life, your soul feels barren. I think seeing your paintings, this particular body, will be just like, I have to have that in my house. I have to see that every day, or I have to get a little bit closer to it,
I've been really busy, so busy the last couple of months with the last push getting ready for this show. But at the same time, I have been so mindful of my gratitude for the opportunity to do this work right now. And I think I have more maturity, more gratitude and understanding for that now, that like, there are so many things about my life and like the support of my family to have the creative freedom right now to do this work. And I'm just the luckiest person in the world to be able to do that. And then I've been thinking to myself over and over, and I think for everyone, like right now, what is it that you plan to do with your freedom? I think we all kind of feel like our freedoms are being encroached upon, but at the same time, were you really using your freedom as much as you could have? And I just I'm hoping that this body of work inspires a feeling of like freedom.
Yeah, well, it's lovely. It's lovely. I think for me, the wish is to bring the magic into day, to make it ordinary, to sort of like to not wake up in the morning, like the people in the forest, for it to continue on and to spill out of the forest, and like, yeah, that's just ordinary. That's just, yeah, that's a satyr. Yeah, that's a big deal. That's kind of the way everything is.
I love that. Yeah, let's keep our enchantment. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. Okay, well, lovely to chat with you as always.
Great
I
catching
wish
up.
you well. What are the dates for the show again?
The opening is November 6th. It will be on view for 4 weeks through December 6th. And it's in the Lower East Side in New York City, Equity Gallery.
Beautiful. And just say your Instagram.
So that
do I
is
call
my
it?
whole name, Patricia Watwood, PatriciaWatwood. And that's
Beautiful.
it, Patricia Watwood. And also, if you Google that, it's easy to find my website.
Yeah. Whereas if you Google John Dalton, you get a physicist from the 18th century who invented something. Apparently he was a great physicist, but, don't bother searching for John Dalton. It won't be me. All right, Paddy. Lovely to chat with you as usual.
Be well.
See you again soon.
Take care of
Thank
yourself.
You too.
Be happy and
Bye.
healthy. I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.
I've never felt this good in my entire life. Make me some spaghetti. Yeah, we are the Argyle Pimps. So buy us a drink. We're better than you thought, but not as good as we think. We are the Argyle Pimps. So buy us a drink. Come on, buy us a drink. Come on, buy us a drink. We are the Argyle Pimps. So buy us a drink. We're better than you thought, but not as good as we think. We are the Argyle Pimps. So buy us a drink. Come on, buy us a drink. Come on, buy us a drink. Up in here, ready to get the butt in gear. I heard my musketeers wanted something weird, so the panda bears back to manhandle the track, planning to panhandle a free beat, then activate it. I'm babbling, dabbling in fanny paddling, glad to be grappling back in the saddle again. Don't make Jack Sprat have to start baffling cats, grabbing at my javelin, snapping, battling fans. Oh, you don't want to test my glands, I'm in the stands, Reinhard testing fans. You know the game plan, name brand rap, bone bees. You don't want no beef with the splurt, you know the steez, off the hook like OJ, all the way to the coast bumping Coldplay. With your girl, have my crew play all day. I serve kids on some souffle, flambe. Yeah, we are the Argyle Pimps, so buy us a drink. We're better than you thought, but not as good as we think. We are the Argyle Pimps, so buy us a drink. Come on, buy us a drink. Come on, buy us a drink. We are the Argyle Pimps, so buy us a drink. We're better than you thought, but not as good as we think. We are the Argyle Pimps, so buy us a drink. Come on, buy us a drink. Come on, buy us a drink. You hoes can pogo on my gonzo nose. My flow's equivalent to marinated mangoes dipped in soy sauce. Man, that means that I'm sick. Buy me a fruit spritzer with umbrella toothpick. It's time to celebrate, I just got my ring. Ned Plimpton, Team Zissou, you know how we do. You need to stand back, we flap gums and dance. Rap rat pack, preparing for small amounts of cash. Count that slow, you little jack rolling dandies. We eat granulated jalapeno seed candy. Ronco, you see Han Solo and Tonto drop inventive skill like Ronco Pale Pronto. We soak in Calistoga volcanic ash, submerged in aqua surge, whirlpool bass, splish splash. We paddle on green seas with seaweed. The beach drinks green tea, me eating some kiwi. We are the Argyle